Everyone, it's time to go on the record with Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker and the issues facing the Bay State. The racial divide, the money, and big party politics. And also this morning,
the question on whether or not to legalize marijuana use in Massachusetts this fall. The governor has already weighed in. We get voters' reactions.
And financial trouble for the commuter rail, the solution, and what it may mean for the future of Keolis. Let's go on the record.
From WCPB Boston, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill, today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Harding, along with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. Thank you for joining us on the record this morning. Governor Charlie Baker sits to our right. Sir, everybody already knows who you are. You don't need any more of an introduction. We're going to dive right in right now.
One my mom would have really liked. Yeah.
We're sorry to hear about
We're
your
sorry
mom.
to hear about her
you.
loss, too.
Thank you.
Lots of local issues to talk about this morning, but dominating sort of all the conversations this past week, the racial divide and sort of the politics behind it. What do you think as governor? Do we need to go, what do we need to do to move forward on this?
Well, I certainly think, and I applaud the folks for doing the day-long dialogue earlier this week. I think a big part of it starts with conversation and dialogue, because that's how you get to sort of an opportunity to find common ground. And I talked a lot, actually, when I ran for governor about the fact that I thought there was an opportunity gap in Massachusetts, and a lot of it was about cities and suburbs. And I campaigned a lot of time during that campaign in communities of color. It's why we created an urban agenda. It's why we hired a number of people into senior positions in our administration who came out of community development corporations, city governments, because we wanted to have people who could actually bridge that divide and engage the discussion. And by the way, I think, maybe I'm being a little naive, I do think people here work this stuff pretty hard. And I think we have made progress on a number of things. Obviously, there's always more we can do. But we take this one pretty seriously.
Body cams, it's controversial. Boston, as you know, is going to start a pilot program pretty soon here. Should police be allowed to turn them off at will?
I think the issue with body cams, and by the way, I think the news coverage on them was pretty much spot on. There's certainly an opportunity to create transparency, but the issue they do raise is, will you get the sort of intimacy that you want law enforcement to have with local communities if everything's being recorded? And I think the fact that the city of Boston is going to pursue this on a demonstration and see how it goes is a really good thing, and I'm very anxious to see what the results are.
Well, since it kind of digs into the business that we do on a regular basis, we understand, and not that people don't, but we do understand how videotape can be turned on, off, manipulated, or moved. Should police be allowed to control the cameras, or should the cameras be whatever, on all the time, on a server all the time?
This falls into the category of I'm not sure I know the answer, and I'm hoping that this demonstration with 100 officers in Boston will start to give us some guidance and some sense about what the right answer is on this. Because I think the answer most people would probably give, I think on both sides of this question, is it depends.
Yeah.
The other issue it's going to raise is how much of that information should be purely, ultimately public information as well. I mean, I think the Boston Police Force is actually an interesting place to go to try this demonstration, because they have in my opinion, just having watched them up close for the better part of the past few years, I think they do a pretty good job of community policing. When I went out with some of the folks in the gang unit one night during the campaign just to sort of see what they do, they started by taking me to a whole series of community events. You know, cheerleading practice, Pop Warner football, a big barbecue, and they said, look, most of what we do, most of the time, is talk to folks in the community who are just doing the kinds of things that everybody does in every community.
But policing can be, as you well know, a highly stressful job. You know what I mean? You can have those moments, but then there are going to be moments of absolute stress.
No, I know, but the point I was trying to make is that these guys did not start with the presumption that as police officers, their only function was to enforce the law. They absolutely believe that becoming part of the community and building relationships of trust on an ongoing basis with people in the community was important to them. And that's where I think the big question about body cams is going to, I'm sure there's an answer there, and I hope we learn a lot from this demonstration.
But is there anything that, on that end, as far as the stress level is concerned, that could be done? I mean, to sort of monitor the burnout or, the expression of frustration on the part of police. Should there be limits to, I don't know, any suggestions on your end to deal with the frustrations and the stress on the part of police?
Well, I mean, we spend about $13 million in Massachusetts on police training. Maybe we should spend more, and maybe some of it should be around this issue of how much is enough, and what are the warning signs, and how would you measure that. I think those are definitely conversations worth having. But I also think the broader conversation just about the opportunity gap, which I believe is sort of fundamental to this, an opportunity gap with respect to education, with respect to neighborhood development, with respect to jobs in the economy. You got to be talking about that stuff too.
So let's go through a couple of issues real quickly here. Massive energy bill headed your way is one of your big priorities this year. It calls for long-term contracts for wind and hydro. Opponents say hydro contracts will add $10 billion to the energy costs over the next 2 decades. Is that true?
So this Canada, which is where most of this would probably come from, some from upstate New York too, they pay about 2 or 3 cents a kilowatt for their energy. We pay somewhere between 10 and 15 cents. And in the winter, our rates can balloon to as high as 50 to 60 cents a kilowatt. We will not take anything other than a good deal, and that's the way this thing was structured in the legislation. If we can't get a good deal from Canada, then we won't do it. If we can't get a good deal from upstate New York, we won't do it. But it seems to me that if you have plentiful, renewable, reliable, 24/7, 365 clean energy available through hydropower from either upstate New York or Canada, and we can get it at a price that's either at or below what we pay now, I think we'd be making a mistake not to take it, because it lowers the cost of families and businesses, and it helps us improve our environment.
Keolis, are you happy with the operator of the commuter rail system so far? Do they deserve another $68 million, which is what they're requesting?
I mean, I guess what I would say is that the renegotiation of the contract changes in many respects a number of elements of it, and will require them to do more and to be better. And I think in that respect, I think it's the right direction. But I've not been happy with virtually anything associated with the overall performance of the MBTA. It's become one of the major reform initiatives for our administration. And I think whether you're talking about the commuter rail or the transit system or the bus service, there was a lot that wasn't working there, and we have a long way to go to fix it. And on the commuter rail piece, the big issue was there was just literally nothing in the old contract that dealt with what I would call the customer experience. And that's a big part of what the redo on some of this stuff's going to be about.
If their contract was up and not just being renegotiated, would you renew their contract with Keolis today?
Hard to say. I mean, my experience with them has been one really horrible winter and one and 8 months after that. So I would call it sort of the grade I would give them would be an incomplete, but I certainly think that they and we need to do much better.
All right, you ready for the OTR pop quiz?
No.
You haven't answered that.
Never.
There was a delay in there. I'm just, was waiting. You are the most popular governor in the country right now. That's question one. Are you? No, that's not question one. And voters really like to send people with your experience as chief executive to the White House. So let's see how much you know about governors and presidential campaigns in today's OTR pop quiz. Question one. 17 presidents have served as governor before winning the White House. Only one was from Massachusetts. He was a Republican. Can you name him?
Silent Cow.
Silent Cal. Number two. Can you name the state which has provided the most governors to the White House?
New York.
You got it. You're 2 for 2. See, he was hesitant, and he's 2 for 2.
He must be studying up on this issue.
Well, see,
huh?
I can understand why. The OTR pop quiz is one of the highlights in everyone's life. We'll be right back.